Univision had a town hall, and that orange fool spoke last night, and I want y'all to see the faces. I want y'all to see the faces of the Latino folks in that audience when he started talking about Haitian immigrants eating all kind of stuff. Y'all roll the clip.
Do you really believe that these people are eating the people's pets?
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And this was just reported. I was just saying what was reported. That's been reported. And eating other things, too, that they're not supposed to be. But this is all I do is report. I have not. I was there. I'm going to be there. And we're going to take a look. And I'll give you a full report when I do. But that's been in the newspapers and reported pretty broadly. I will say this as far as Springfield is concerned, because I do know that situation. You have a city of 52,000 people, and they've added almost 30,000 migrants into the city. If you were a person that lived there, if you lived in Springfield, Ohio, and all of a sudden you couldn't get into a hospital, you couldn't get your children into a school, you wouldn't be able to buy groceries, you could no longer pay the rent because the government's paying rent, any of that, if any of that happened, it would be a disaster for you and you wouldn't be happy. We want to make our people safe and secure, and we want to make them happy. But Springfield, Ohio is a perfect example. You have a town, a beautiful little town with no problems. All of a sudden, they have 30 or 32,000 people dropped into the town, most of whom don't speak the language, most of whom don't speak the language at all. And what they're doing is they're looking all over.
I said I'm done here. Y'all got to move way faster. When I say I'm done, I ain't got to say I'm done 4 times. 1 time suffice. Okay? Here's the thing that, like, this is the person who will be in charge of the Department of Justice. This is the person who is going to be targeting Haitian immigrants, targeting black folks. If those were immigrants from the Netherlands, from Switzerland, he would have no problem if it was blonde hair, blue eyes. And so that's really what you're dealing with. And I need our folks to understand that when the Supreme Court has already made clear he has full immunity, that is giving a person like him the license to act a fool. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I can't help but agree 100% with what you're saying, because, I think we've seen a lot of 2-term presidents in, the last, 30 years, 40 years. And, they're always on those PBS documentaries, they come back and say, well, I had to wait until after my first term to do what I really wanted to do and be really deliver on everything I said I was going to do. And to me, that's the scariest part about Donald Trump's presidency, because just like any other president who's gone 2 terms, he's now, I think he's going to be emboldened to do everything that he fears may have kept him out of even the conversation of re-election.
Greg Carr, let's be real clear. Black folks had better understand there will be a target on our backs if this fool is back in the Oval Office.
Of course, and we have to act accordingly. Donald Trump is a fascist. We see that. The people who follow him are angry. He's whipping that anger up, that divisiveness, that anger. Underneath anger like that, when you're talking about fascism at a national level, is fear. And their fear is us. By us, I mean all non-whites. That craven little man, that shrunken spirit little gnome named Stephen Miller, will slither back into the White House. They may even give him a portfolio that might even include up to maybe Attorney General. He will lead the purge. And what that elder had on his face as Donald Trump ventured into Univision to attempt to burnish this kind of fear, and be very clear about this. What he is saying to folks in the Spanish-speaking community is that we're going to deport the people who are not like you. They're trying to convince them that this won't be me. It'll be those other people who didn't come here legally. What he had on his face was a reaction to the reality that everyone who is not white will be put out of this country in their white fever dream. So when we look at this, this is the rising tide of color at the beginning of the 20th century, Lathrop Stoddard and all them. This is the real Americans argument in the 19th century during the period of the Civil War and before. This is everything they've been doing since they passed the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965 has been designed to try to roll back the 20th century and that rising tide of color. Finally, Donald Trump realizes that the only card he has to play is that fear. So he has now dropped all pretenses. The question we have to ask ourselves is, when are we going to drop all pretenses and understand that there is no communicating with these folk? They must be rolled over like the sea.
Nola, on that particular point, we're going to play in a second. Last night at Univision, folk did not look happy when he talked about deporting 11 million people. But we have to understand, I've run into a number of black immigrants who are voting for Donald Trump. In fact, when I was doing early voting, I ran into a sister who is a Jamaican, who is a Republican. And I'm sitting here going like, baby, he gonna deport you too. Just you can't just flash a Republican card and think you gonna stay, because Nola, the reality is they are hell bent on advancing this great replacement theory. They are scared to death of color. They're afraid of the country where we're going. I was having a conversation with an anchor over the weekend about their issue, and I was explaining to her, she's a national anchor. I said, look, 10 years ago, Europe was going through this. So you had massive protests and battles because of African immigrants. Well, here's the reality. White folks in Italy, Germany, UK, Ireland, other countries, they stopped having kids. Those countries were losing population. You cannot maintain your gross domestic product if you don't have people to do those jobs. In the United States, there are more than 12 states right now where the average annual white death rate is higher than the average annual white birth rate. The numbers are the numbers. And so what Trump is complaining about Springfield, that was a dying city. They had lost more than 25% of their population, and those Haitian immigrants are actually bringing that city back. And that's the thing they don't want to talk about. That was one of those white towns that was dying because folks were leaving the Rust Belt states, Nola.
And, this isn't new, as everyone has pointed out. This has been the buildup over time. And the idea of whiteness cloaked in your vote, as the cloak of whiteness that a lot of folks that are new to the country, or maybe, first generation, believe that cloak, that voting cloak, will save them somehow. And where we are right now, you don't have to do the guesswork. You don't have to say, well, in my experience, they are saying it plainly in your face what is going to happen. Donald Trump walked into Univision yesterday and told people, and repeatedly told people who do not speak English that these people don't speak English. Are you kidding me? You know how bold that is, to walk into a place where most of the people need an interpreter, to say that. So the boldness and the cruelty has gotten worse and worse, and Donald Trump has been the perfect vector for that cruelty. So for any group with any melanin in their skin, any group with too many alphabets in their last names, you are susceptible to the cruelty of Project 2025. And let's not get it twisted. It has nothing to do with, violence and eating pets or anything like that. It really is. It's just cruel. It is literally just that. For years I've tried to, figure out eloquent ways to put it. But when you take a step back and you're like, what, these people just really do not care. Shaming him does not work. Calling him racist do not work. They have leaned all the way into that cruelty, honey. And so that's what we're up against. And there are groups coming into the country who are scared and trying to figure out, okay, which decision should I make? Would I be safer with the cruel folks? Maybe if I'm with them, they won't come for me. And it's false. It's demonstrably false. And that's part of the messaging. This whole divide and conquer with, Black immigrants, first generation, second generation, however long you've been here, that is also working. The same way where, the Trump campaign, I have this conversation often, especially with a really good friend of mine who owns a hip hop magazine and allhiphop.com. We have a lot of conversations about the way that the Trump administration has targeted so many people that exist in that community on purpose. And the way that they have talked to the Black community via tacky sneakers, via, I must resonate with the Black community because I have mugshots. And then there was a rapper the other day who said with Trump's baby mamas and all his convictions and stuff like that, he's blacker than a Black person walking around. The way that they understand Blackness and the way that they are targeting Blackness on top of making sure that those divisions are sown between immigrant, non-immigrant Black people, they are trudging away at the bottom of all of this. And they are going for the dirt. They are going for the silt. They do not care. So when I say that the goal is cruelty, they don't care how they will achieve the goal. They are just trying to get there by any means necessary. So my message to young folks, listen, I was a caregiver for a very long time. My mama died a year ago. And I am here to tell you, if my mama was not a veteran, I don't know what I would have done to pay for her insulin, to pay for her health care. So even if you don't think that, issues are impacting you right now, I guarantee you, your mama, your daddy, your auntie, your cousin, your uncle, everybody around you who is at the top of the bill matters, who's in the middle, who's at the bottom of the bill, the entire ticket, it all matters. If you don't think it matters for you right now at 18 or 24 or even at 30, I promise you it matters for your community.
Are y'all hearing immigration as an issue from peers?
No, I'm not. I'm not hearing immigration.
I'm not either.
What do you hear is the top issue?
Reproductive rights.
Reproductive rights?
Reproductive rights and voting rights.
Economy.
And what about the economy?
The economy, as far as the cost of things, which I know presidents don't control, but the mass misconception is that whoever's in office, and it's because they take the blame, they take the credit. Never take the blame. They always take the credit for the economy. And so I'm hearing things cost too much. I think that's chalked up to the fact that a lot of my peers, like I told you before, we're in our first adulting roles, and we thought everything was sweet when we used to ask mom and daddy for stuff. That's right. It wasn't paying for it. That's right. And now we're paying for it, and we've seen, I think, year over year, probably, some of the biggest increases from the time we were like 2016, 2017.
But it's also price gouging. I mean, we also understand that. And also understand you were dealing with from 2020, 21, also 22, you were still dealing with a pandemic. And so it's just understanding those realities. And so we'll see what certainly shakes out.
I get it. The cost of rent, groceries, and utilities is too high. So here's what we're going to do about it. We will lower housing costs by building more homes and crack down on landlords who are charging too much. We will lower your food and grocery bills by going after price gougers who are keeping the cost of everyday goods too high. I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message because you work hard for your paycheck. You should get to keep more of it. As president, I'll make that my top priority.